the WikiLeaks lawyers, like for example Sarah Marshall, who's a WikiLeaks staffer and she's a lawyer at WikiLeaks, immediately stepped up to represent Snowden in the case when he ended up in Russia. And WikiLeaks, on the same token, was always thought of as a Defense Department extension, because the WikiLeaks was always leaking information related to State Department and not really related to the Defense Department. During the WikiLeaks controversy, even Robert Gates said that the information doesn't really harm us. The information out there is just random news clippings and random opinions about State Department officials that doesn't really hurt the national security of the U.S. But I think what the NSA leaks do is that they provide you the proof that this has been happening, and any program that the government's going to come up with in the future is only going to be more secretive. And by revealing this, it is it satisfies a purpose. It says that, well, our intelligence methods are compromised, and we need to come up with better intelligence. And and at the same token, it gives people who are against the NSA some ammunition. But the way that the leaks are the way that the leaks are revealed is very selective. For example, there's one of the producers. If you watch Charlie Rose, one of the people who was the editors of the Snowden leaks article for Washington Post, talks about it on Charlie Rose, and she says that they actually contacted the government beforehand to make sure that these leaks were okay, and then they were not revealing sources, and they were not revealing individual agents who were involved with these leaks, and the government gave them the write-off. For example, the PRISM leaks that happened, that was the first leak where it was established that the NSA had exchange-level taps into Google, exchange-level taps into Facebook, where it doesn't even matter what they have access to. They can look at everything just like a Facebook administrator can, for example, right? These leaks, when they came out, I mean, people weren't, floored by them, because it was always assumed that this was possible. And yeah, of course, we were monitoring chats. We had the encryption technology to break into chats. Don't underestimate Russia's propagandistic play when it comes to all this. Russia wants Snowden in their territory, and they want Snowden to embarrass the U.S. But the more you listen to Snowden, the more he doesn't sound like the activist he was. He sounds like a guy who's advocating policy. He sounds like a guy who wants to justify NSA surveillance, and he wants to have a conversation with the American people, rather than this like, oh well, if I come to the U.S., they'll prosecute me. He actually wants to make a deal with the U.S.
What type of deal?
I mean, this has been talked about even in the Senate floor. I think I can link to the sources where senators are asking one of the Justice Department representatives whether Snowden, might even come back to the U.S. because of all the information that he has taken, and maybe can we come to a agreement with him where we find out how much information has been leaked, and we bring him back to the mainstream, and then we justify all our programs in the sense that, oh well, these programs led to these arrests, kind of thing. If they're surveilling on conversations, for example, I think the requirement is that, say you're a foreign suspect and I track you, and then some Americans caught up in the mix, there is good authority to try that American that's caught up in the mix. And they're saying that the international surveillance that we do, Snowden and all the activists are saying that the international surveillance that we do has mixed in with the domestic surveillance, where domestic people are caught up in international surveillance rings, and they're implicated eventually. But what the Snowden leaks show, and what the NSA's testimony eventually in Senate shows is that almost none of the NSA information actually led to arrests in terrorism cases. Even senators, I think congressmen who had the committees, like Darrell Issa, for example, they've had open hearings where the NSA officials don't want to admit that they, were able to make convictions with these casework, because one, the way that the casework and the way that the evidence is obtained is unconstitutional. So you wouldn't be able to make good case work with the evidence that the NSA obtained. So all of the evidence that the NSA obtained is only valid in secret courts. So that would be the FISA courts, which are totally secretive, and
Which is unconstitutional.
yeah, and then
I would
exactly.
guess.
Yeah, they're unconstitutional because they don't. These are the same courts that were guilty of the warrantless wiretapping that Verizon, AT&T, and all these Singular and all the companies did after 2001. So these are the same companies who have morphed their role into the broadband world. So they're involved in just telecommunications, now into broadband, and broadband is getting increasingly monopolistic because they're doing all these acquisitions. Next is Google and Facebook and Microsoft, for example, who know a lot about you and your personal life than any other company in the world. And I think the eventual goal is to merge the telecommunication information set with the internet persona information set and use that as a surveillance object against the public.
To what purpose?
I mean, from what I see, it may be being used as political leverage against candidates who want to run. It may be being used as political leverage against activists, because that kind of targeting activist mentality has been around since 2001, where the CIA, for example, was even implicated in tracking activists on the ground when they're not even supposed to do that. And national security letters also factor into a lot of this, because the national security letters force you and your attorney to not reveal anything to the media. So we don't know what kind of national security letters people are getting based on NSA surveillance.
Right.
There was a case recently where eco-terrorists were implicated in a bombing or something, and the court has had NSA evidence of surveillance, but eventually, when the defendant's lawyers, went to discovery, that they found out that the casework was not eligible because it was unconstitutional to use NSA surveillance, because it was a dragnet and it wasn't, targeted to the person. There was no warrant that was issued for that case.